Hey, this is Sky, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create positionally accurate augmented reality experiences like what you're seeing on the screen for free. So I'm going to be showing you the three main parts. So big picture, we have exporting the Revit model from Revit. Then we're going to go onto the website and configure the space. Then we're going to go on site and put a QR code on the site. And then I'm going to show you how to use the iOS app, which is what you're looking at here on an iPad. All right, let's start with Revit. So the first thing you need is the Revit plugin. And this is what it looks like. It's only 3 buttons, and these will pop up under the add-ins tab once you download the plugin. And to get to the plugin, you need to go to fullscalear.com, and it's on the main page. Click download Revit Exporter. That's going to take you to the GitHub releases page. Just choose the latest version and install that. And once you do that, you can open Revit back up and you should see these buttons appear. So what this is going to do is it's going to take everything that's visible in your 3D view, and then it's going to save a .glb file of that into your downloads folder. So you need to have a 3D view active, and it's going to export things, it's going to export your materials differently depending on your visual style that you have selected. So right now we're in textures view. If we go to consistent colors, it's going to export basically colors like this, although you're not going to get the patterns. And then if you go to hidden line, you're just going to get a model that's all white. I'll say almost every time I do this, I'm choosing textures or realistic. Either one of those views is going to try to export the materials perfectly so that you can actually see your textures, which makes the augmented reality experience much more believable. Okay, so you need a 3D view, you need to be in textures or realistic view or visual style. And the other thing you need is you really need this Revit family here. This Revit family is called ARQR code, and it's formatted. It's an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper is what it represents, and this is going to be the QR code that you print out and put physically on your job site or wherever you want to view um, this model in the real world. And so this QR code is how everything is coordinated. And so the positioning of it is very important because your entire GLB model is going to come in on top of that QR code. So what the Revit exporter does is it basically puts your 000 point right here. Um, and that's why you need to have this QR code. So you need to make sure that you have that QR code. You want to make sure that you don't have two of those visible in your 3D view. If you have two of them visible, it's going to give you a warning. And you need to coordinate the positioning of that. So that's actually the hardest part of the whole setup is getting that positioning of the QR code right. So you want to find a place on site where it's acceptable for this QR code to live. In the case of this example, it was the side of the building. So in the case of this project, it was the side of this wall here. And we measured over a certain distance from the corner of the wall, and it's at the right height as well. So once we get this all set up, we can go and hit export to GLB. The downloads folder is going to pop up and you can give it a name and hit save. It's telling me it already exists, so I'm going to just overwrite that. Tells me how big the file is, and now it's in my downloads folder. Okay, there's a couple of the buttons here I should talk about. One of the About button is straightforward. This will just link you to the documentation on the website. Now, this other button called Custom Textures, what this button does is it creates a folder within this location. This is where all the Autodesk materials are stored anyway. So it adds a folder called Custom Textures, and then it always looks here. So basically, if you put your textures in here, the exporter will be able to find it reliably. Now, there is another thing that I need to say about materials in Revit, and that is that Autodesk has made it incredibly difficult for people to build exporters for Revit because they have a lot of different material schemas that they've developed over the years. And basically, they all have different properties for like the textures, for instance. And then they've got some of them have custom like noise maps or like wood grain and kind of this crazy stuff that it's really hard to build an exporter for. And so I will say if you're having a hard time getting your textures to look good or to look like what you have in Revit, I would say duplicate or create a new material. So go to the materials browser, click create new material. This is going to create a new generic schema material. As long as you put an image here and then you link that image to the custom textures location, the exporter should be able to find it. All right, now that that GLB is exported, we can go to the website and you create a new space, give it a space name. So I'm going to say demo. All right, so it's doing a few things here. First thing it's doing is it actually is making the QR code. And if we scroll down, we can see that. So this is what we're going to print and put on site. And all we have to do here is add the GLB. This is what we just exported from Revit. So I'm going to select that and bring it in. And we should see it pop up here. There it is. And you have to click in order to interact in the scene. So this model, if we click it, we can see where its position is, and you want it set at 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to lock it down. And you can add other GLBs to this scene if you want. Um, I don't, I don't need that. So all I'm going to do is just update scene here. And what that's going to do is it's going to convert it to USDZ format, which is what your iOS device needs in order to render this scene. So if you see the red border, it means that something in this model, it means it's basically not ready for the iOS device. And so we have to press update scene, and that's going to convert this scene into a USDZ file. And there we go. Now, all we have to do is print this QR code. I'm going to press the download button. That's going to save it up here to my downloads folder. I'm going to open that up. Let's take a look. Here it is. All we have to do is print it out. So I'm going to go File, Print. Now, this is very important. We do want to print this out at 100% scale. So don't let it try to shrink this QR code. I'm going to print that out. Okay, so presumably you have now gone out on the job site and you've placed this QR code on the wall where it's supposed to be. One thing that you want to do is screen record because this is how you can share it later. So if you swipe down from the upper right of your iPhone or iPad, you'll get this screen here, and you press this screen record button right here towards the bottom right. So when you do that, you can then launch the app. The app is going to start looking for a QR code. And so then you need to point it at the QR code and it's going to download the necessary models for this scene. After that, it's going to ask you to move your device around in order to give the device context about the scene. So this is why the person that's doing this is panning around the QR code. It's to create a mesh of this area and give the iPad a really good idea of its environment so that it can accurately place that model. Once the model is placed, you're going to hear a chime and you're also going to see this green border. This green border is the Revit model. That's the Revit family that we put in Revit. And now you can see this person is walking backwards, keeping the iPad pointed at the ground. This is to give the device a good idea of where it's at because it's keeping track of where it is in real time. And you don't want to point it up at the sky and then walk backwards. It always needs some sight context, meaning the cameras have to be pointed at something that it can use to establish relation, like an understanding of where it is. And here it is. This is our Revit model. And you can see the iPad's doing a pretty good job of creating the illusion of this edition here. There's a cat. The cat is not included.